So I really want to thank our panelists. Everyone's name and role and institution is up on the screen. I'm going to ask that we start here, and just if each of you could just do a quick introduction with your name and your role and where you come from.
Thanks, John. Good morning. My name is Isis Arce Vega. I am Vice President of Academic Affairs at Valencia College. I come to this role after serving for about a decade at Florida International University in Miami, Florida, supporting faculty and partnering with faculty to advance equity-minded teaching. Prior to that, I got to teach, and I miss it every day. I taught writing at the University of Miami.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Raines. I come from Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence, Kansas, and I'm happy to represent my school, our students, our staff, our faculty, and our president, Daniel Wildcat. My background is really rather interesting. I tell my students I went to college on a baseball scholarship and really never left. And I've been an English professor really most of my adult life. And in addition to being an English professor, I actually had the opportunity to work as a consultant for General Motors and for Ford for while I was also a college professor. So I bring that kind of sensibility to the work that we do really at the university. We're a school that is made up of 100% Native American students from around the country, currently representing over 140 different tribes and traditions. So it's a wonderful place to be, and I'm happy to be here and share what we're doing with you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Krause. I'm an academic advisor from Montgomery County Community College in Pennsylvania. I've had the pleasure, we have a large group here. I've had the pleasure of being an academic advisor for the past 11 years at Montgomery County, and I've also been a faculty member in the psychology department for the past 13 years.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Mayer. I teach chemistry at Bellevue College, where it's, thank you, where it's 6 a.m. right now. So, but it's the largest community college in Washington State. I love teaching chemistry and playing with fire safely. And I'm also department chair, have served as the Outcomes Learning Assessment for 5 years, and now I'm a co-lead on ATD at my campus.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm a 2020 Dream Scholar from Northeast State Community College in Bluffville, Tennessee. I'm also the student government president at the school.
Wait, I thought you already...
Yeah, we know you.
All right, so as you can see, we've got a nice wide range of roles represented. The theme for this session is the future of teaching and learning and the importance of collaboration across institutional divides. So I'm going to ask each of you a question that I hope allows you to dig in a bit to your unique situation at your institution and speak to this, and then we'll get into some more conversation. Jenny, I'm going to start with you and ask how your role in your college's work with achieving the dream enables you to break down silos.
Thanks, John. I'd like to say as a faculty member leading ATD at my college that I often feel sort of the divide between administration and faculty. So I feel like I'm caught in between that a lot of times. I am grateful to my college leadership that they recognize the role and importance of faculty in this work of closing equity gaps through our unique role with students every day, helping them achieve their goals. So as co-lead, I oversee 3 work areas, focus areas at my college. We're working on pathways, integrated student support, and faculty professional development. Each of these groups have dozens of people working on them. And as you may be familiar with the idea that it's hard to get everyone in one room talking about the work, doing the work, people inevitably, they're not able to come to meetings, and then you spend the rest of the meeting sort of catching everyone up, and then you don't have time to do anything. So it's been challenging for all of us to get through these moments because you do want as many different varieties of roles in the room so that everyone's connected, faculty, staff, administration. So that makes it challenging. At Bellevue College, we try to break down the silos by intentionally meeting to make the connections. So we've had meetings specifically for finding intersections between the different focus areas, and I've called them connection retreats, which sounds fancy for a 2-hour meeting, basically. But it's important to meet regularly, face-to-face as much as you can. We started with a simple Venn diagram of the 3 work areas and trying to discuss where we saw intersections. And surprisingly, the biggest challenge at the beginning was just for each group to know what they were doing, what their own work was. Because when you're thinking about these big systems changes, it's really difficult to wrap your mind around even any one of those focus areas, much less how they connect. So I think we've spent a lot of time just really talking about what we're doing in our own role and how it interfaces with others.
Thank you. Stephanie, I want to come to you. One of the things that I thought was interesting in one of our conversations before the conference was we were talking about the language that we often use when we refer to different groups of people on campus. And without realizing it, very often people say things like faculty versus student affairs, or advisors versus this other group. And it's interesting, and we have to pay attention to language and be careful about that and mindful of it. Can you describe how your teaching faculty and the professional advisors at your college collaborate for student success?
Sure. So our structure is a little bit unique at Montgomery County Community College because our advisors, although they are professional advisors, are 12-month faculty. So we do have a lot of shared governance with our teaching faculty colleagues. But to your point, John, there is a lot of us versus them. Back in 2014, we started our advising redesign process with the purchase of a tool, an early alert tool, that I think for many of us we thought would be the silver bullet. We'll put this technology in place and it will solve all of our problems. And we realized pretty quickly that a tool, a piece of technology, is not a silver bullet if the other parts of the system are not collaborating as well. So although this tool was the start of a process, it was not the end of the process for us. Through this early alert system, we started to have the ability for teaching faculty and advisors to really get to know each other. We are assigned by program of study as professional advisors, so we started to really get to know the faculty in our areas. So this one tiny little tool that we purchased really opened the door to a lot more conversation that we were able to have across the aisles. We got to know each other as humans, we got to meet each other face-to-face in meetings. We now have shared professional development opportunities. Advisors are now invited to division meetings, which is wonderful for us. We get to have conversations. We get to talk about individual students as well as programmatic differences. Advisors are invited to annual program reviews. So all of a sudden, we have this really shared approach towards student success. Just last night over dinner, we were talking about how in one program that was pretty close to being on the chopping block, having a very specific advisor assigned to that who's collaborating well with the program, within 2 years, that program is actually at capacity. They're talking about growing the program and expanding it because the sections are completely filled now where they were struggling. That's how important that connection is between the advising side of the house and the teaching side of the house for, again, individual student success as well as programmatic success.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Isis, I want to come to you. We've both done faculty development work in our careers, and I was thinking about a pre-conference session we had yesterday morning with a room full of people doing faculty development work, faculty who have been given responsibility to lead professional learning activities for their colleagues. So it's interesting to me that you have that experience in your background and now you're in an academic leadership position. So I wonder how that background that you bring, that experience as a faculty developer, informs how you approach your work now.
Thanks, John. I will say that my work in faculty development and educational development informs my work in more ways than I could ever have time to share with you. And I'm grateful for that every day. And certainly it afforded me the opportunity to collaborate with any number of stakeholders, internal and external to the organization. But I'm going to focus on faculty and what I learned from faculty development work that informs the work that I get to do with faculty at Valencia. And I'll say two things. One, I am reminded that I must center learning. That as much as our institutional outcomes of interest are metrics around persistence and progression and graduation, these accomplishments, these milestones, they really do not equate to equity unless they represent core knowledge and skills. Students' lives will only be changed with the knowledge and the learning that those credentials and those outcomes represent. This is a great opportunity and something to kind of foreground in our work with faculty, is that's why so many of them are there. As learning is their main outcome of interest, I'm reminded that I must always think about the role of learning and not to conflate learning and outcomes as if they were one and the same. The second one, major learning from faculty development, I would say, is the idea that I learned very early that support and professional development for faculty cannot be something that we do to faculty. It must be something that we do with faculty in true collaboration and in true learning community. So this idea that faculty might be part of the problem and that we would be able to advance student success were it not for those grouchy faculty, I really try to push all of those ideas away, because I have had the opportunity to see collaboration with faculty in action. The work is immensely and immeasurably more effective. It's more powerful. It's better. And something like buy-in is no longer relevant, as they were there from the very beginning.
That's really helpful. One of the things that I sometimes hear when I'm talking with folks at colleges and they're trying to develop a more meaningful strategy around faculty professional learning, the start of the conversation is somebody saying, the faculty are really resistant to X. And I always ask, so what do you think what do you think is actually happening there? What do you mean, first of all, when you say resistance, and what's going on underneath the surface for people, and what motivates that reaction that you're experiencing as resistance? Because that may not be what people are intending. And very often we find that when people are exhibiting what we think of as resistance, it's actually people wanting to say, I have a better solution, I think, to the problem you're trying to solve, but we need to actually be in conversation about how we're going to move this forward.
Agreed.
Thank you. So Tuan, I want to come back to you. In your beautiful poem earlier, you thanked your professors. You made reference to the ways in which professors at your college have supported you and helped you. I wonder if you could tell us and speak a little bit more to that. What have you experienced where your professors have been able to support you towards your success?
Well, luckily, Northeast State is a great college. The collaboration between the administration, student services, down to the professors is really fluid, and they are able to refer to us when we have situations. Being a non-traditional student, I was not expecting the cost when I first came back to school. And that first month almost killed me. I was tapped out, completely broke, didn't even really have enough gas to get to school. I was just talking about it in class to a fellow student, and one of my professors overheard the story. And at the end of class, she pulled me to the side and asked me, how bad my situation was. And she was able to refer me over to student services, where we have a student needs program where they help us with gas and to help with bills and food to get us by. And really, without that support, I probably wouldn't even made it past the first month of schooling. And on top of that, it just showed me that the school, the teachers, they actually care about the students. And when you feel that sense of care from the school, you kind of reciprocate it back, and it becomes a circle where they give to you and you try to give back to the school. And Northeast State is great with that.
Thank you. Jim, I want to come to you. I know that you've been a faculty member and a dean at your institution. Now you're serving as an acting vice president. Can you talk about some of the more meaningful collaborations that you are helping to support at the college among faculty?
Sure. I'd like to talk a bit about, I'd love to talk about Haskell and tell you all about Haskell. Haskell was established in 1884 as an industrial boarding school for Native American students. And so it's an institution that's been around for 136 years, and it's evolved in really very interesting ways. My own grandfather, I'm an enrolled member of the Muskogee tribe of Oklahoma, and my own grandfather graduated from Haskell in 1931 when it was a high school. And Haskell has that kind of role in many lives of Native American people really across the country. So much so that we've got a term called Haskell Rascals, and those are people whose parents met at Haskell. And so you get these interesting combination of tribal affiliations, Cherokee and Crow and so forth. So it's a fascinating place. And we take our teaching mission really very seriously. As I said, I went to college to play baseball, and that didn't turn out. I thought I'd pick a more practical career, so I got a bachelor's degree in philosophy and then went on to study English literature. And I say that as in a humorous way, but it really has been very impactful in my life. And so I'm very much an advocate for the humanities. And I like to say, regardless of all the debate that rages back and forth, I hope humanities are here to stay, because I think they're as vital today, really, as they've ever been. And that is the way indigenous cultures for centuries have engaged the world. And we find ways within our curriculum to really honor that and celebrate that among our students. Our faculty, particularly the humanities, is very collaborative. We are trying to reinvent college writing for Native American students. It's one of those areas where they struggle. And I think it was Victor Hugo who once said, "A writer is a world in a person." And for our students, it's really, they come, the fact that some of our students are even on our campus is an incredible testament to their will and their desire to learn and to grow, because they've had to overcome many hardships, really, even to be one of our students. And so we want to encourage this and support that. Coming from the field of literature, I think we love literature, and we love to read literature. We're passionate about writing and about teaching. But you find out the first day when you're a teacher of an English class, not everybody feels that way. And part of your job is to convince students that there is value in what they're learning in the classroom. So I think one of our big goals is to make those the humanities and other kinds of disciplines accessible to our students, particularly for those students who didn't come with the kind of college preparation that many of us had the opportunity to have. So one of the things that we've done to improve writing, we've kind of redesigned our classrooms. We've de-centered the authority in our classrooms. We made them more comfortable spaces for our students. We put more value on their own experiences and the stories that they have to tell. Storytelling, as you know, is a significant aspect of indigenous cultures. But one of the things that we've been able to do along those efforts is we have some very good neighbors in the University of Kansas, just a few blocks away. And one of the things we do is take advantage of their doctoral students in composition studies. So they come to us and teach a lot of our introductory sort of basic comp courses or first-year writing courses, and they bring really cutting-edge knowledge of where that discipline is. And someone like myself, coming from the literature field, we have the luxury of presuming a certain kind of proficiency when it comes to writing. We don't teach people to write, we make them better writers, and we focus it particularly on literary analysis. But that's not where our students are. And so it's particularly challenging for us to sort of make that kind of academic work available. And so those graduate students coming from KU really serve a very important partnership with us and collaboration with our faculty. And in fact, in recent summers, we've been holding a retreat on the campus of KU. And we will have one of those adjuncts lead be a facilitator for us for that day, and try to bring us up to speed on where college teaching is and some of the new strategies. And just if you're curious, some of the strategies we're using are low stakes writing, those kinds of things. Moving away from, say, academic essays right off the bat, really helping students find voice and find it through writing. So that's where we're at, and we're really excited about what we're seeing. We're redesigning some programs, we're expanding some programs, and we're on the verge of developing a Center for Teaching and Learning as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. One of the things I love about that example is the way the institution is really flipping the script around the narrative we often hear around adjunct faculty. So oftentimes when we talk about needing to support adjunct faculty around their pedagogy, there's an assumption that is not borne out in the data, but the assumption is that they are inferior classroom teachers and that they need all of these additional supports. And here's an example where you're relying on your adjunct faculty, who are these doctoral students from KU, to come and provide professional learning for their colleagues at Haskell. I think there's something really innovative about that approach.
Can I just add one more thing? As the academic vice president, I get to read student appeals. And when a student is struggling academically, sometimes they're placed on probation because we don't want them to exhaust their resources. We want them to maybe take some time out and kind of regroup and take another shot at it. So I got a letter the other day from a student, and the letter began, "Dear Dr. Rains, it has come to my attention that I'm currently on academic probation." And I thought that's delightful and wonderful. But it also shows the ways in which we have sort of made the teaching of college writing something apart from communication. That once the student steps into that mode, they no longer think they're communicating. They think there's a certain way that they have to speak and a certain way they have to write. And I think we're trying very much to move away from that because many of you who teach English might share this experience. I'll read a sentence in a composition that I really can't make heads or tails of. So I'll simply ask the student, what is it you were trying to say? And then they'll tell me, and then I'll say, write that. Write what you just told me. Right? And so anyway, I just want to suggest that there's a different way to teach college writing, and we're trying to discover that.
Thank you. Thank you. Felicia, I'm going to come back to you. We've given you a little bit of a break from the talking. So I want to come back to your wonderful book. You did share some examples during your presentation. There's another great example in there of how early on in the semester you find ways to help your students become aware of the resources that are available to them around the institution that they might not just trip over, that you're finding a way to proactively connect them with those resources. Can you share a little bit of detail about what that looks like?
Sure. You know, colleges do a great job doing outreach, reaching out, helping students to find their way to college, but sometimes we have to do a better job with in-reach, right? Connecting students, as Tuan alluded to, connecting students to resources at the college. And faculty can play a bigger role than they think sometimes. So I teach the first math course that a student will take at a community college. And one of the things our whole department does is we really focus on connecting students to a lot of support services. We bring in academic advisors, we bring in transfer counselors, we bring in financial aid officers. And even though, you know, as a faculty member, you're like, oh, do I skip polynomials or do I cut this down a little bit? I'm not sure. You have to make those hard decisions because as I look at evaluations and get feedback from students, that's one of the single biggest, most important things that makes a difference for them being at the college. And for me, the financial aid officers come in and they say this stuff and they advise, and I'm like, what? I didn't know that. And I'm getting educated too, so I can help to connect students with resources in that way. But I think that in-reach is an important work that faculty have to do. They have to really figure out how do you fit that in. One of the ways we do it at our college is, I call them Kyle Wallstrom slides. I don't know, he's from some office. He provides these slides where they have important dates, like when you have to drop a class without a W. And so at the beginning of class, I can just put them up there. It doesn't take a lot of time. The speakers take a little more time, but the students just find it so worthwhile. And I think it makes a difference between students staying on campus because they get the money they need. It kind of speaks to your example, Tuan. It makes a difference between them staying and not staying. And even though, like I said, square roots are very important, sometimes you have to find a way to like shave something or move it around because that's really important too. If they don't stay, you know, whether or not they can solve logarithmic equations is irrelevant, right? Yeah.
Great, thank you, thank you. So I want to dig a little bit further into this idea of collaboration as an important theme in the future of teaching and learning. Some of you are working at institutions that in a very explicit way hold up collaboration as a core institutional value. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And even if your institution doesn't hold it up that way, what does it look like in recurring ways around the institution for people who have different roles to collaborate?
I can share an example. At Bellevue College, we have a lot of different, sometimes competing faculty groups. So we've got faculty who are interested in climate justice. We have the Outcomes Assessment Committee. We've got faculty Commons, which is our Teaching and Learning Center. We've got our own PD, Faculty Professional Development Committee that's separate from the ATD Professional Development Committee. So it gets really confusing for faculty. And we had a college day just for faculty professional development, and all the groups I just named wanted that day to further their own agenda. And even though we're all faculty and we're all doing professional development, everyone had their own sort of idea and plan for what they wanted to do. So we all sort of gave a pitch, and ATD won it. I'm a great presenter, obviously. And I had this day in my hands. I was holding all the power. But, you know, it wasn't good. I mean, you know, for us to compete like that and to look at each other as adversaries. So what we did was we got together. One person from each of those groups came, and we all sat down and we said, what is the best use for faculty for this day? And let's look at the larger vision and what we're trying to accomplish. It also helped that we met for happy hour. That was really good. So by the end of that session, we were ready with a plan for how we were going to divvy up the time that we all felt connected to the work that we were collectively doing. So it was really great to just talk to each other, try to solve problems together.
Thank you.
Yesterday marked the 1-year anniversary of my time at Valencia College. So thanks. It's been a great year. And Valencia is one such place that prides itself on collaboration as one of a few core institutional values. And so since I'm still relatively new to the institution, I can tell you what it looks like and how it became inculcated in ways that stand out to me and have stood out to me over the past year. I see evidence of collaboration in a few key places. I'm going to say first, in my calendar, there are enormous chunks of time that have been blocked out that are non-negotiable for me, right, in the best way possible, where Valencia has made time through governance structures and recurring, very long meetings, where collaboration is visible, it's an expectation. It is where I am expected to be with colleagues from across the college in all of our regions. So I would say that the second place that I see evidence of collaboration is in my odometer. I drive across our counties and our service areas because this collaboration and authenticity must include some of that for face-to-face collaboration, though we also leverage technology. So I see it in the amounts of time that say this is important and you will allocate time to it because what we value, we make time for. I see it in my odometer. And third, I want to honor the work of my colleagues, some of whom are here today, in the ways that they uphold that value of collaboration. And I would say in their courage to say in meetings and privately, this isn't how we do things. Who was not part of this conversation? If we are to live into our value of collaboration, we're not doing it right now, and let's pause and make sure that we do. So in monitoring and ensuring that we live into that value, we uphold it.
Nice, thank you, thank you. So that's what it looks like, I think, in a very positive way. I wonder, though, what does it look like when people experience barriers or challenges to collaboration? How are people working through that?
I think at Montgomery County Community College, one of the concerns that we are facing, as many of you probably, are the high rates of our adjunct numbers compared to our full-time numbers. And that's a concern because we try to communicate as best as we can. We try to hold lots of meetings. But a lot of adjuncts, as many of us probably started, were those Rhodes Scholars that were traveling between multiple institutions with competing obligations. So how do we make sure that they are also at the table? At Montgomery County, on our shared governance committees, we do hold specific positions for part-time faculty to be able to participate, but that's still a pretty small percentage. So it's really about how do we effectively communicate with that population, because they are touching our students just as much, if not more so, than the full-time faculty are. So to make sure that they feel empowered, that they understand the resources that are available to help the students feel connected to campus, I think is a really important component of that.
Thank you.
One of my favorite experiences at Haskell was when a student came to my office one day and he said, Dr. Ains, I just want to tell you, we had just completed John Krakauer's Into the Wild, which is a really compelling narrative about a young man who wanted to find his place in the world. And I thought it would be a particularly interesting text for our students. So we had many of them come from Alaska and come from rural places. So this young man from Pine Ridge came to my office and he said, Dr. Ains, I just want to tell you, this is the first book I've ever read cover to cover. And I thought, there's a particular responsibility we have to make our disciplines, I think, accessible to these first-generation students. And I think one of the big challenges is, I think within the academy, we still think in binaries. And I know we are critical of others who do that, but we often do that ourselves. One of the things our English faculty has done is they've begun offering write-ins, and some of you might know those having gone to writing conferences. And it's where the English faculty and peer tutors and so forth make themselves available to students across the campus in all classes to come together and work on their writing assignments. And the first time we did that, we had about 25 students appear. And the second time, we had over 100 students appear. And they filled all of our classrooms in our humanities building with tutors and faculty sort of coaching them on their writing. So by sort of breaking down those disciplinary boundaries and making ourselves available to other faculty, I think we can focus more on what student needs are and be less concerned about some of those academic distinctions that we tend to support at times.
Thank you. So in a moment, I'm going to ask that we go around and do a lightning round, but I do want to draw attention for everyone to a few key resources that I think will be of interest if this conversation has been interesting to you, some of the issues that have come up. At the Dream Hub down the hall, we have several new reports and publications out. There's a series of 4 briefs from our team in Holistic Student Supports, one on equity and design, one on increasing success for student mothers at community colleges, one on supporting the success of students enrolled part-time, and another on a gateway to college for high school students. Our teaching and learning team has put out our Engaging Adjunct Faculty in the Student Success Movement Practitioner's Guide. So that's a great toolkit, a great reference for colleges that are interested in developing programs to support adjunct faculty, both in terms of their classroom practice, but also in terms of how the college engages them in its broader student success work. There are also a few, there'll be many, many wonderful programs, sessions, concurrent sessions, and spotlights throughout the day. I do want to draw your attention to the spotlight sessions at 2:30. There's one on focusing on invisible students, identifying strategies for #CCWomenSucceed, one on building a culture of excellence in teaching and learning, and one on managing whole college guided pathways reforms. I think each of those are really great examples of how throughout the day, today and into tomorrow, we'll be continuing to bring, thread through the messages that we've heard here this morning from our great speaker and these wonderful panelists. So to close things out, I'm going to ask that each of you go through, and this is a lightning round where you have 2 options of which way you want to go with this. So one option is, what is your vision for the future of teaching and learning and the role of collaboration? The other option is, to our colleagues in the audience, is there a way that you'd like to challenge each other and to challenge our audience in terms of how they'll be collaborating for student success going forward, or how you'd like to see us be collaborating for student success going forward? So maybe we start down here?
Sure.
Okay.
When I look ahead, and I will choose option 1, John, and I dream about a future of higher ed, I imagine myself peering into one of those little glass windows in our classrooms, as I have done at a number of institutions. And in my dream, I cannot tell who is teaching the class. The power dynamics have been shifted such that it is a beautiful community of learners engaged in authentic work. And I see students both in their capacity as formal learners, and I see students, to hearken to Karen's comments from yesterday, as partners in that learning. They are learning, they are in there as part of a teaching team with faculty, and evidence of learning is being collected, and it is beautifully diverse students learning together with faculty and with one another.
Thank you.
I'd like to give recognition to all the TCUs who are present at this conference. They do extraordinary work. And from their inception, they've dealt with things like food insecurity and housing insecurity and so forth. So to come to this conference and to see others talk about that and find solutions for that is really very encouraging. So, but I guess what I see really for the future is, I think it was Wittgenstein, the German philosopher, who once said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." And I think what we can really do in higher education is provide these students with the kind of language that helps them succeed. I think we heard reference, I think it was last night at the plenary, about an instructor who admonished a student for double spacing an essay, when in fact he really had worked harder and produced more work. But often when we ask students to do particular assignments, sometimes the very language that we use, and if I read an essay and I say, well, there's a comma splice here, there's an awkward construction here, this is a non sequitur. The very language that we use in instruction historically is off-putting for students and it's inaccessible to them. So I think if we equip students with that language and empower them, they have stories to tell, and it really provides more opportunity for the futures.
Thank you.
I would answer at Montgomery County, I'm known for having Stephanie's utopia. I don't take that as an insult, but I often talk about, in a perfect world, this would be the case. So in my perfect world, I think in the field of education, specifically at my community college, we would really talk about students as individuals. I think we usually have a pretty broad brush when we talk about other groups. We talk about all faculty, all English faculty, all advisors, and we talk about all students a lot. We are suspicious of students. All students cheat, all students do this, all students are trying to game the system somehow, and they're not. And I think it's our job as educators, it's our job as leaders at community colleges to really start to look at students as individuals. We're seeing this in the field of healthcare. We're seeing this in broad business areas where individuals are being seen as individuals. And I think, again, in 10, 20 years, I can't wait till we get to a level that we can see individual students as individuals and understand their needs and understand their desires and are able to meet them where they're at instead of trying to have them conform to our needs as an institution.
Thank you.
I think today we've been talking about collaboration. I think it's too easy for us to each be in our own bubbles, or perhaps I should say it's hard enough for each of us to be in our bubble. But to have to stop and think about communicating our work and getting other people to share in that, in the ownership of the work, I think that's has been one of my challenges as a co-lead on ATD. And I think in this world of social media, we're all sort of self-promoters also, right? We have to not only do the work, but we have to communicate it, we have to get it out there, we have to get people to care and help us with it. So I guess the challenge for me is how do we stop, communicate the work clearly, and make it a compelling message? Last year at ATD, at the DREAM conference, I took a pre-conference workshop on effective communication, and one of the messages was make it compelling for people to want to care. They're busy, you want them to engage in the work, but you have to perhaps give them a place so that they can engage. And I think sometimes we forget that. We just think, well, if I just tell them about it, they're gonna care and they're gonna wanna do something. But if you don't give people ideas on how they can participate, I think it makes it really hard and easy for people to say, well, they're taking care of it, so I can just keep doing my own stuff. So I think for me, and maybe for some of you, the challenge would be to think about giving people space in our work to share in it and to contribute.
Thank you.
I guess my goal or dream would see for collaboration for student success would be more student involvement. Really, who knows better how a student will succeed besides the student? The challenge I would put out there is I don't know what kind of platform you already have at your schools for a student to voice their opinion or an idea or anything like that. At Northeast State, actually next Tuesday here, we are running a student-only town hall where all the students are invited to come and they're there to able to voice any opinion, any ideas, any complaints, any compliments, free of prejudice or judgment, just so we could get kind of, an overview of how the students are feeling. Of course you'll get the ones that complain about parking and food and stuff like that, but there will be individuals there that will provide quality information that I think that, for you folks in administration will probably help to create more student success.
A recent study came out in the AERA journal about how at community colleges, part-timers, the students in part-time faculty classrooms don't do as well in the next class. And it's not because part-time faculty aren't as good as full-time faculty. That's just not true. I was a part-timer for 12 years. But what the study suggests is it's because part-time faculty are not as connected to institutional resources. So my challenge to community colleges is to find a way to pay part-time faculty to get connected, and not like a one-off thing. Oh, look, we're done, check. It's not that easy. It took me, I'm 3 years at the community college I'm at, and I'm still learning. There needs to be ongoing paid training for part-time faculty, not training, that's minimizing, but opportunities for them to find out at the community colleges what are the institutional support services for students, because that's really key for student success. So that's my challenge, that we find ways to do that at our community college.
Thank you, thank you. You know, I think the challenges that we're talking about, the themes that we've raised in this session, are difficult for people and often require us in our work, whatever our roles are, to begin to do our work differently than the ways we've become comfortable doing the work. It's important to remember what it feels like for our students. Felicia put forward the idea of helping students embrace a growth mindset. We have to do that for ourselves in our work, to say, this is uncomfortable, but it's a way that I haven't worked yet, but it's possible that I can do that now going forward, and it's going to ultimately mean something really important for our students. I want to just make a note, for those of you who are interested, we have copies of Felicia's book on sale, and she'll be here to sign books. I want to thank our Dream Scholars for their presentations this morning. I want to thank Dr. Darling, and I want to thank our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much.